Good afternoon, everybody, and greetings to you. I'm going to do my task was to do the consolidation, but I'm a bit gobsmacked after Dr. Suleiman's presentation. I just feel like we've been hit by a tornado internally, not mentally, internally, and shaken up a bit about how we should be thinking about community engagement. He stood here as one of the best community engagement person we know of. So let me just start then to get my thoughts together with the basics about the conference itself. So the title was Community Engagement, or the main theme of the conference, Community Engagement and the Trajectory of Community, University, Society Relationship, Past, Present, and Future Possibilities. And based on that main theme, we had four sub-themes that covered the following perspectives: conceptual, pedagogical, ethical, and social responsibility. And those sub-themes had a number of questions which your presentations and your abstracts actually addressed. From these four perspectives, we had more presentations, abstracts and presentations on the pedagogical perspective. I think people felt more comfortable presenting in that area, and that was followed by the ethical and social responsibility perspectives. So the conceptual bit, I'm not sure, because it did cover what the main theme, a part of the main theme was the past. And we had fewer abstracts and presentations on the past of community engagement. And I'll come back to that issue of the past in a few minutes. This year, we've had, as Di said, somebody asked about the monument and using this building. As Di mentioned at the beginning of the conference, the reason that we had to look for another venue was the number of abstracts we received. There were many, many more abstracts than last year. Last year, we accommodated, the conference was held at Maistry, and it had 2 breakaway rooms. This year, because of the number of abstracts, we had to have more breakaway rooms. That was one, the number of abstracts we received for this year's conference. And what was also interesting is that we've had more abstracts from different disciplines. And this actually shows the movement of community engagement from previously the focus on the social sciences and humanities. We've had abstracts from focusing on STEM. And yesterday I attended a presentation briefly on engineering, and I found that quite interesting, to get engineers involved in community engagement. These are just some of the ones that I thought were a variation now from the normal social sciences and humanities. When we were looking at the abstracts, and I remember asking Renee and Thandi this, invasive alien plants and community engagement? I mean, how do they go together? But we actually had an abstract with community engagement and invasive alien plants. And it was very interesting to have a presentation from a private higher education institution and the relationship with community engagement and universities that are involved with community engagement. biological controls to clean water. And lastly, the last presentation that we had, patient record keeping. I mean, who would link that to CBPR and to community engagement? I mean, 2 or 3 years ago, we wouldn't even think about that relationship. So quite a good variety, and it shows the movement of community engagement into more disciplines in a university. And then we went across boundaries also. We had Mateus from Chile, and everybody knows Mateus by now. We've got Margaret from Kenya, and in a way, I'm quite sad and disappointed that we didn't get our presentations from Tanzania and from Uganda, because the Tanzanian presentation with the focus on Julius Nyerere's Ujamaa was very critical to our understanding of community engagement in the African continent itself. So we went across boundaries in this conference. Some highlights. One, I want to start with the formal lecture, and for those that were here, with the formal lecture presented by the CE Community Engagement Awardee, Rhodes University Awardee. And she highlighted the combination of head, heart, and hands in community engagement through teaching and learning and research. I mean, this is something new also that hasn't been, may have in 1 or 2 cases, but not as clearly articulated, that community engagement is the combination of head, heart, and hands through teaching and learning and research. Our redress community engagement passed the CE project. So we've had, even though there were few, there were very interesting ones. The one by Martina and the Reverend on the history of Mamelodi, the visual redress of Stellenbosch University's project, redress and restitution, and Claire's presentation today, the historical ideas of community. And that were very interesting presentations. Another thing about the presentations is that more of them had theoretical underpinnings attached to them. So it shows clearly that we are building a body of theoretical or theories for community engagement. And actually that is quite encouraging. We've had more abstracts and presentations in storytelling this year. Storytelling and the posters. And storytelling is actually quite an important method of community engagement. And this is also encouraging when we can understand community engagement through storytelling, which is a powerful medium. So that is some of the findings of the presentations itself. I want to go to the keynote speakers, and I want to mention why I felt gobsmacked is that we started with Professor Andre Keat and Dr. Suleiman. Then we had the DVC of teaching and learning, and we had the DVC of research, Rhodes University. And in between we had Margaret. And there was this flow, and I just felt like all of these people may have sat the night before together somewhere, met and thought about, okay, this is the message that we're going to send to this conference that is happening in the next 3 days. But of course they didn't. but the message was very, very strong. Let's just start with Andre. Andre saw this very strong link between community engagement and transformation. And that transformation and community engagement, he saw community engagement and transformation as co-authors of a reimagined university. And this reimagined university, that community engagement could bring about, has to actually look at this through changes in institutional structures and institutional culture. See, we cannot continue with community engagement if we don't critically examine our institutional structures and our institutional cultures. We can't talk engaged research if the culture remains the same, if the structures remain same. We can't talk service learning if we don't put the word critical service learning in front. You know, service learning, we should actually rethink the use of the definition of service learning, Tim, with no disrespect to you, that we've been using from the American context for so long. We have a history, we have a context. What purpose do we actually want service learning to play in our country, in the African context? And therefore, it has to be critical service learning, where students are taught to ask, why is such a situation is the way it is? It's not just taking what is taught in the lecture room about your discipline and going and using it with communities to see what difference can it make. Why aren't we teaching students critically to think about the knowledge that they are gaining? And when they go out into the communities, why is this context the way it is? You know, why isn't there any change? Poverty, inequality, unemployment, corruption, other social ills have been perpetuated for decades in this country. Are we making any difference? And this is what Andre was trying to say. It's time that community engagement started seriously contributing to a reimagined university, not universities as they are. So what does this require? Do we have the courage to do that as a community engagement sector? We were talking, I heard this conversation going on about the structure for research ethics and you know, but do we have the courage? This was a conversation we were having in our transport, the small group that were being transported together. When you get to a stage individually, when the institutions, leadership structure, executive structure actually tells you what you are thinking and what you are trying to do is extremely radical and it could affect your job, would you ever think of a reimagined university? Do you have the courage to do that? So these are questions that we have to ask about community engagement and what role does it and can play in the reimagination of a university. We seriously need to continue with this dialogue on the effectiveness and the impact that community engagement makes, not just with the university academics and the students, very important, the impact that it makes on the students, and how effective is it for us, and this word graduate attributes also, we need to re-examine that. How do we contribute to educating the human beings that we call students holistically? their entire development holistically. So does CE, what impact does CE have on this education of students? Di mentioned educating for life and for a living. Do we seriously think about that? So I know that word classification actually puts me off also, but what we need to do is we need a framework, a national framework that can be adapted to context and institution to look at, even the word measurement, it's not quantifiable. How effective are we? How are we making the change that is required in communities with communities? How are we making an impact? How much are we shifting poverty? How much are we shifting inequality? And how much are we shifting unemployment? When Darren and I presented, well, Darren didn't, but if you looked at what the Black consciousness programs were about, it incorporated social, cultural, psychological, economic development. So it has to be properly planned and thought through. So that dialogue is very important, and it needs to progress. Now that we have USAF on board, we hope that we can make good progress on creating this framework for how we look at whether we are effective and whether we are making an impact through community engagement. I want to talk about Margaret's presentation. So Dr. Suleiman used the word spirituality and faith. And when Margaret did her presentation, this part really got me thinking when she said, let me get to your notes, Margaret, that I took. Decolonization research. There were 4, Margaret, can you help me out here? With the individual, you had a diagram that showed, oh, here's it. Our sense of self, our identity and belonging. These questions we need to ask ourselves individually. And this is in line with what Andre talked about, self-reflection. Each one of us need to do this seriously, reflect on who we are and how we do our work, and then institutional reflection. And this links in with, Margaret used the word spirit, Andre didn't, but he talked about institutional culture. Where do we come from individually? Who am I? My sense of belonging. And where am I going to? If we don't do this individually, she said, how can we ask these questions about us collectively? So where do we come from? Where are we going? What is our sense of belonging? Right? And where are we going? So the word spirit has been quite strong in this conference. Margaret, Andre didn't say it in that way, but he actually said, when you do self-reflection, you're going deeper into yourself, okay? So you're in touch with your inner sense, your inner being. So there are a couple of questions that we have to ask ourselves as a collective. Is how do we have the courage? And that's the first thing, as a collective. And are we a collective? That is the first question we have to ask ourselves. Quite honestly, some of us work from a very shallow sense of what community engagement is. Some of us have a medium level of understanding. And I'm saying this only because community engagement, formalized community engagement, is a recent happening. in South Africa. You know, if we had the years that teaching and learning had and traditional research, I wouldn't be saying this, because everybody would have given this deep thought. And it's time for that now, this deep reflection and thinking, you know, from moving from a shallow, getting deeper into understanding community engagement and seriously asking questions. Do we have, asking this one very important question, do we have the courage as a collective to contribute to the reimagination of a university? So that is where I will leave you about the conference. I want to just say something about the African Journal of Higher Education Community Engagement. For those who haven't looked at the journal properly and the first few pages, I'm the chief editor of the journal. And I've been going around asking people, listening to their presentations, are you prepared to write a paper, a manuscript for the journal? And everybody that I asked were very happy. But I would like to put this across to everybody. Please, if you are interested in publishing from this conference a paper, and from this conference what we intend to do is publish 2 issues. You see, we did say that the journal will be published annually in November, but we have enough quite exciting presentations for 2 issues, one in November and one in June maybe next year, and also for a book on community engagement. Okay, so anybody who is interested, I will approach all of those. I will send emails to all the people that I've approached, but I didn't have the time to go to everybody. So anybody who is interested in the journal itself, you all have a copy. You have an email there and contact details for the journal. There's a Roos editorial team. Please contact us and let us know if you are keen to participate in it. You see, once the June publication is done, then we have 3 publications. Then we can start our application to DHET for accreditation of the journal. Okay? So thank you very, very much for all of those who agreed, and we hope that we get a lot more saying that we want to contribute a paper for the journal, or we want to contribute to the book chapter. The last thing is this, that somebody asked me while we were talking about, as you heard the DVC teaching and learning talk about the postgraduate diploma in higher education community engagement has been accredited by SACWA. And Rhodes University Community Engagement will be offering it in 2025. And it is online. It can't be okay. It's going to be offered online. Anybody nationally, regionally, and internationally can participate in this PGDIP program. Thank you.
A last word from me. Are you exhausted? Your head full, too many tabs open. I know the feeling. I'm feeling like that as well, but still so inspired. So it's been 2.5 days. It was only 2.5 days ago that you arrived here and started with the conference. I'm sure it feels like much, much more. You brought us 70 presentations, 70 quality presentations, 3 dialogues, and 7 keynotes. Each one rich, varied, and thoughtful. that accumulated effort from all of the participants in the room today. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all the planning and research work that went into each one of those presentations, the dialogues, the chairing of sessions, and the participating in general. Those who've traveled far, I know South Africans have come from all the provinces, and many of you have traveled here. The SRC took 2 days to get here, I think, on the way. I won't mention all of you, but let's mention those who've traveled from abroad. Matthias, who's traveled all the way from Chile via the US and back, and between those two countries. It's not the last we've seen of you, Matthias. To Margaret and Daniel, it's been lovely having you all the way from Kenya. Marisol from the US, Tim Stanton, also from the UK. Thank you all sincerely for the investment you've made in being with us today. We really want to grow the South African space and put our arms around the whole of Africa and all of those who believe that the South can begin to generate very exciting models and knowledge and to share as equal partners with the North. To the National Arts Festival for this lovely space and accommodating us at the last minute when we realized we couldn't fit into our Maistry. The Rhodes Kitchen for their catering. And then to the Roost team, it's been 4 or 5 months of lots of hard work. To each and every one of you, you have been incredible. We've had team leaders from each little section, and you've really made us proud. Thank you so much. And then in closing, I must say Dr. Suleiman had the same effect on me. That I loved it when he said, you know, the community engagement work is the language of the heart. And as we move forward, you know, that we will sometimes find ourselves working in spaces where people just use their head and their hands. And just to remind them that what it's going to take to heal our country and to build it into its full glory is the head, the heart, the head, the hands, and the heart. And if we can all go away, the best way of teaching is just to be the change you want to see in the world, as Gandhi said. I was so encouraged in the first keynote with Prof. Keert. I kind of knew it, but it was nice to hear him affirm it when he spoke of the importance of reimagining higher education so it can begin to build the kind of society that where everyone can prosper. And when he said it's going to be community engagement, that helps us to drive that change. So as you go away, it is a responsibility. And it's something we aren't going to take lightly. You wouldn't have been here if you felt you could take something so big and so important lightly. So as you go away, know that what the work that needs to be done and get stuck in. Thank you all once more for a wonderful, wonderful conference. You have made it such a rich and rewarding experience.